You're with the Path to Power. I am your host, Petya Rasheva. And today I am talking to Melissa Daimler, the Chief Learning Officer of Udemy. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Melissa, would you briefly tell us about yourself?
Sure. This is always a challenging question, but I always start with a couple of themes that have really been part of my journey throughout my entire career. And I would say those two primary themes are systems and systems thinking, and builder. And so I've been at and have been very lucky to have been at some really well-known, iconic branded companies like Adobe, Twitter, WeWork, and now Udemy. And I would say throughout all of those journeys, I have always taken a step back and looked at the entire organizational system and how it connects. So when we're talking about issues or how to develop people, I think it's really important to look at things like organizational design. What is our strategy? How is our kind of talent and people strategy connected to the business strategy? So systems thinking and how things connect definitely has been a key theme of my career. I'm also, like I said, a builder. I would say that even though I've been in some fairly large companies, I was at Adobe when it was probably 3,500 people, and it grew to over 11,000 when I left. So high growth company. Twitter also high growth. Was able to continue to think about building on whatever foundation we had at the time. So how do you continue to innovate and think differently and ask different questions about, fairly similar issues that we deal with in business and especially on the people side. So those are the main themes of my career and kind of what propelled me to really focus on culture specifically, because I think that culture is really how we work with each other, and it connects so many components throughout that organizational system.
System thinking and culture. Has that been your secret source of success? What has been critical in your path to power?
I think it is the fact that I have been always looking at the system that, I think any problem that you're presented with, it's important to look at not just what that presenting problem is, but what perhaps is beneath that problem. What is that connected to in the greater system, so that you can't just resolve, you can resolve that issue, but you can resolve potentially other issues as well. And I think that culture has for so long, at least in my career, been looked at as a nice to have or a perk or a fun thing to have in a company versus a strategic lever that we can use to build robust, kind of programs and initiatives to engage employees and to tie that, kind of the meaningful piece and the purpose of what a company is all about to our strategy. So I would say, being able to connect different components in a organizational system has been part of my secret sauce, as you say. I would also say, the connection piece has to do with the network I've created and the people I have met. I have had pretty amazing mentors and coaches along the way who have connected me to other people that would help me in my career. And every pretty much every job that I've had has been through my network. And none of the jobs I've had have been on a job description, that I've applied for. They've been kind of co-created by me and my hiring manager. So I would say another piece of my success has been my network and my continued focus on making sure I establish and really sustain those great relationships along the way. I would say at this point in my career, I'm now trying to give back to that and be mentors to people earlier in their careers and provide whatever coaching I can provide and guidance and advice along the way, because I so valued and appreciated that in my career.
And Melissa, once you reach a position of seniority, what changes? What changed for you?
I don't know if there was any big change. I would say that I love coaching and I love managing teams. I always look to hire people better, smarter, more innovative than me. I think the biggest thing that a lot of managers deal with, and I was in this pool as well, is the opportunity and the challenge to delegate. And so we become these subject matter experts and we build our own kind of portfolio of skills and services and solutions, and it's hard to let some of that go over time. So I've had to consciously figure out how to build great leaders around me and take a step back and give them the limelight whenever I can, and let them be the voice of whatever we're creating, so that they get exposure, they get experience, they get an opportunity to work with senior executives, just again, like I had the opportunity to early in my career. So I would say, as I've moved up in my career, being able to delegate, being able to highlight and amplify some of the work on my own team is something that I've continued to focus on even today in my career.
What is the role of the learning officer in a learning organization like Udemy?
Yeah, it's an interesting role in that, and it's one of the reasons I came here. You get to not only develop the learning and organizational development function internally, but you also get to talk to many different customers. We have over 16,000 customers now, and I get to really be a thought leader with them in developing their learning strategies. We also get to have a say and provide our perspective in our own product and solutions, because we are the target customer often in a lot of our customer experiences. So I love that experience and being able to have both that internal focus as well as the external focus with customers.
And what is your take on this phrase? Because you talked about culture, you talked about strategy. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
It's interesting because I talk about that in my book a little bit. I kind of make fun of that quote, and I say that culture and strategy need to have breakfast together. I think I love that phrase because I think the message behind that is that culture is really important, and if you don't get that right, even if you have the best strategy, you could have disengaged employees who don't understand how to work together, what we value, what behaviors are expected. But I also think that I've learned over time that it's really important that those two are very much connected and aligned. We're going through an experience even here at Udemy where we're kind of thinking about that next phase of growth in our own organizational life cycle. And we're continuing to look at our values and behaviors and what do we expect from each other. And we also have to anchor those against our strategy and continue to tell employees why it's important that we're focused on these particular strategic anchors. And with that, behaviors that exemplify our values are what we expect. So I always call it the why, what, and how. You know, are you clear about your purpose, your why? Are you clear about your what, your strategy? And are you clear about your how, your culture? And so, again, I love that quote, but I think it's really important that all three of those pieces are closely connected and aligned.
And it's not an easy task.
No, it's an ongoing task. I mean, that I talk about that in my book too, that it's like anything worth pursuing, it is an ongoing practice. And I have to remind myself of that often too, kind of being in a system that, it is something that you have to work on together. You know, values are good if you can really explain what it looks like behaviorally. That's why I'm so passionate about explaining behaviors with a value. So instead of just talking about innovation, you know, what does that mean to your company? I talk a lot about this example where to some companies it might mean speeding up the idea process, the innovation process. To some companies it might mean slowing that down so that you have quality ideas. So it's really important that you really explain what those behaviors are, but it's also important that you embed those behaviors into your core processes of that life cycle. So how are you embedding those behaviors into how you interview, into how you onboard, into how you develop employees, into how you reward and give feedback? Because then employees see that these aren't just a list. These are actually behaviors that you're expecting me to exemplify in my day-to-day work.
Your book's title is Reculturing. What stays behind it?
The title of this book evolved over time. I really was wanting to have a verb in the title because, again, I think that culture is not a noun. It's a verb. It's an ongoing set of practices that we do. So reculturing is really about this continuous process of connecting your behaviors, processes, and practices with each other and with the organizational system. And so the emphasis is really on, you know, you continuing to do that process over time, and especially as your company continues to grow and moves into those various inflection points.
What does it take to reculture your staff?
You know, it's not easy. I'll just say that. I think it takes an intentional approach to reculture, and it's not just the job of HR. It is the job of not just leaders either. It is the job of every single employee in an organization. And so, you know, it's our job as leaders to make sure that we model those behaviors, to recognize those behaviors, to reinforce those behaviors. And it's the job of every employee to hold each other accountable to those behaviors. And so I think it's an ongoing practice to reculture. And, you know, there may be times, like I said, where you have to go back and review your values and behaviors to see if these are still relevant to what you need and what you want to see in your organization at this time. So I don't necessarily think you have to review your culture as much as you review your strategy annually, but you might want to check in on your culture maybe every other year if you're not growing as fast. Some companies check in on their values and behaviors every year. Some do it even more, but it is an ongoing check-in that I recommend you do in terms of looking at your culture and making sure that it's still relevant.
Melissa, and talking about culture, you live and work in the Silicon Valley in San Francisco. What has it meant to you?
To live and work in Silicon Valley?
Mm-hmm.
I feel really lucky to live here. I do think that we have opportunities in Silicon Valley and in the high tech world that we don't necessarily see in other industries. I do think we have the opportunity to experiment, to innovate, to try new things, to think differently in ways that I sometimes take for granted. And so I have appreciated the opportunity again to be that builder and be able to think differently in solving issues that, again, I've been around for over 25 years now in this industry, and at times it feels like we're still solving the same problems we were solving when I first started my career. But again, I think the challenge is how do we approach these problems differently? How do we ask different questions? How do we think about even things like culture differently? So I do realize that being in Silicon Valley, being in the tech companies that I've been in, have given me opportunities that I'm really grateful for, to be able to innovate in ways that are really exciting and are opportunities for me and my team to make an impact that I some of the things that we've done I am really excited about, and I don't know if I would have necessarily had those same opportunities in different industries that may not be as open to innovation.
Or different places in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. And Melissa, I want to ask you about your TED Talk. You had a TED Talk, and I am a TEDx curator myself. So I am curious, how did it feel to be on that stage and throw your message to the world?
I think it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was a goal of mine for a long time. I spent probably over 80 hours preparing for that TED Talk. I took it very seriously. I credit, again, a lot of mentors and coaches. Susanna Baldwin is a presentation coach who I worked with quite a bit to get to the TED stage. And it was really important to me that my message was available to not just other professionals, but to anybody in the community. So I used the metaphor of sailing throughout the talk. I leveraged it throughout my book as well as a way to think about systems thinking. And so by the time I got on the stage, I felt pretty comfortable with my story. And was able to, be somewhat relaxed as I shared it, but it was hard. It was definitely a challenge. There were a couple of people who went right before me who forgot their lines and they had to reset. So that was interesting, but it's a huge privilege to have been able to been picked for that, and hopefully I'm grateful that a number of people have already looked at the talk, and that I get the opportunity to, in 13 minutes, share a little bit about what reculturing is about.
The topic is reculturing.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll publish the link to your TED Talk for everybody who is curious and would like to watch it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And Melissa, lastly, how do you rest and recover? How do you keep your spirit high?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I am a big believer in mental health and physical health. I've definitely had my own journey with both of those in my family and with myself. I usually work out on a daily basis. I go to the gym every day. I meditate every day. I get a lot of sleep. Sleep has become much more important to me, especially as I've gotten older, and I've reiterated that with all of my nieces and nephews, that sleep is really important. I try to have space throughout my days. I am not a good person when I have back-to-back meetings, and I always tell my team I am not that important, that I need to be in back-to-back meetings. So I always look at my calendar and make sure I have space and time to use your word. I love that word, recover, and be my best self in every meeting. And so I try to be really intentional in my days and make time for, again, that the personal time, the physical, the mental space. I think that's really important. And I've had many moments in my career where I didn't take care of myself mentally or physically or emotionally, and I've been very burnt out, and it took a while to recover from that. So the more that we can, and here's that word again, integrate some of those practices into our daily lives, I think it's really important to do so.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something else that you would like to share with the people that are starting their professional journey now?
I think we've covered a lot of them. I think in summary, I think it's really important to really nurture your network and really build relationships at all levels with your colleagues, with your peers, with mentors, and continue to strengthen and connect with those people, and always figure out, what you can do for them as well. And, I think that's a question I always have with people, especially when I feel like somebody has really given something to me, what can I do for you, or how can I help you, even if it's something small. So I would say continue to develop your relationships, really figure out also what skills you're good at, where you get a lot of energy and passion, and how do you continue to build that skill set and become an expert in that area. I mean, I think some of the skills I have are around coaching and being able to build great teams around me is something that I am hugely passionate about, and something that I've made sure I continue to have in any job along the way. So, continue to establish your network, figure out, what skills you're passionate about. And then what we just talked about, make sure that you establish really good practices and habits early in your career around taking care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for this conversation on my behalf and on behalf of the Paths to Power audience.
Thank you for having me. This is a fun conversation.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.